Hey everybody, this is Eric Conley, the Erie County 4-H Youth Development Agent, and this is another 4-H career conversations. And today I have with me Tonya Hatfield. I would say old friend, but I know that she would take offense to that. And so I'm going to say a friend that I've had for many years in my life. So, um, hey Tonya, how are you?
I'm doing well, Eric. Good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. Tonya is a nurse practitioner, and so I want to get into a little bit about her career and what she does. And my wife is a nurse, and so I know that there's a difference, obviously, between a nurse practitioner and a nurse. And so I'll get into the questions that I sent you, and we'll go from there. Okay.
Hey,
All right. So the first thing is what do you remember wanting to be when you grew up? When you grew up?
my mom was one of those teachers, so she kept everything I ever did from kindergarten up. So we actually got this box out about a couple of months ago and we're looking through it. And kindergarten, I made what did I want to be when I grew up? And I had a nurse's hat.
No, really?
And my mom was like, see, I did keep something that meant something. So I think I've always wanted to do something medical. So I guess from a very early age, I wanted to be a nurse.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. So, and all the other interviews that I've done, usually there's like somebody's like, oh, when I was a kid, I wanted to be, something totally different. And so it's good to hear that, even as a young age, you kind of progress through that. So now the next question is, and you can answer this in actually two different ways. So it's the question I sent you was, what was your first job requiring a completed application?
okay.
But you can talk about beforehand, like if you had jobs beforehand or had a job beforehand, what was your first job that you didn't have to complete an application for? So I talk about generally when I do the interviews, I talk about that when I was 14, my uncle got me a job working in tobacco. I clearly did not have to fill out an application for that.
Right.
I was just graced with, the ability to move things and plant things. So you can talk about both what your first job was without an application and then your first job with an application, if you don't mind.
Okay. So my dad was an ag agent. So from very young, my brother and I both raised crops, believe it or not. So we actually got to be the people. It was our crops for college. So we actually were the employers. So I started out as the employer, but I still remember working pretty hard in that growing up. And then that kind of proceeded to my first job when I actually did apply for something and I was a lifeguard at age 15. And then that kind of progressed to when Eric and I actually met, which was in college, which I probably had one of my favorite jobs that I've ever had, which was we actually worked at 4-H camp together over the summer, which my kids are currently enjoying every summer except the past summer because of course camp didn't
We'll get back
exist.
there. We'll get back
I
there.
hope, I hope. Gosh, I hope. I know.
But yeah, so raised crops and then worked as a lifeguard was your first job. Do you and this is a question that's kind of off script, but what do you remember about the application process or the interview process for being a lifeguard? Or was it like, oh, you have your certification, go rescue people?
It's kind of funny because it ended up being my high school science teacher that was actually running the pool this summer. It was just the local public pool that I was actually working for. So it was a pretty easy application. Oh, you're interested? Okay, you got good. We'll hire you. So that job was actually pretty easy. And then you can progress to actually working for 4 H camp. We had to go through an interview, through a panel, and then we filled out all kinds of applications that gave you a progression.
All right, so we'll continue. So now obviously you're a lifeguard and you went to college, you became a nurse, and so what are the educational requirements for the job that you currently have?
Okay. So I actually started at UK, got a bachelor's of science in nursing, and then worked as a nurse, which I would highly recommend anybody that even wants to extend their career past being a nurse itself, actually working as a nurse, because no matter what happens in healthcare, I can always go work as a nurse. Which I value my education as a nurse and then actually working as a nurse because just learning uh, to understand how to communicate with families, how to communicate with just healthcare workers in general. is invaluable to what I do now.
Right.
I can always remember doing what the bedside nurses are doing now. So it just helps from that point. And then I went back to school. I currently have a master's in nursing as an acute care nurse practitioner, and then I'm board certified through that. To get that degree now, UK in particular has gone to a doctorate program. I do not have to go back to school to get my doctorate, but if you did go to get my degree now, you would have to have a doctorate in actually the profession itself.
Okay. Very good. So you have the degree now. So tell me about the work that you do as a nurse
Okay.
practitioner now.
I have actually been a nurse practitioner now for close to 15 years. Um, when I got out of school, I worked with infectious disease, which was a very challenging role in itself. I learned an invaluable amount of information from all different types of disease processes. Worked in every hospital in Lexington because we traveled between the hospitals. And then about 2 years ago, I took a position with UK, and now I'm currently in cardiology. I do the heart transplants, the LVADs, which are the assist devices for the left side of the heart, or just advanced heart failure itself. My current role is working with a group of cardiologists, and I oversee the care of those patients while they're hospitalized. I'm all inpatient care.
Okay. Very good. So what are some of the challenges of your career? And this can be, when I ask this question, I always want to start with the challenges because I want to start with that, and then we'll get into the joys of what you do after that. So if you have challenges, then what are they and what you do?
Well, challenges itself, coming from actually private hospitals to UK, there's a huge difference. There's a learning difference. So, for example, challenges when I had my prior role was learning where I fit into the role. And that was my big challenge there. When I started with UK, you then have residents, med students, fellows, and attendings where I'm used to just working with the physician one-on-one. So now I work with a group. For example, yesterday morning when I was rounding in the hospital, there was the attending physician, the 2 nurse practitioners, and our 2 cardiology fellows, one with heart failure and regular cardiology. So it's like a group of us. It's almost like we attack a room, not necessarily meaning it like that, but it's a huge group of people. So learning to fit in that role when I was used to just working one-on-one with a physician has been an adjustment for me. But that would be the big challenge I can see in that role.
Right. So what about some of the joys of your current career?
Okay, so currently, I would say my biggest joy is I get to see people when their heart is in such bad shape that their only options are, it can get to a point where their only options are, we have to put a mechanical pump in your heart, or we're going to list you for a heart transplant. And, getting that patient to that part and actually coming through with a heart transplant, which, it's a joy and also a little bit of a sorrow. I don't ever meet the donor's family. I don't ever see the donor. I don't see that side of medicine. I see the joy of my patients getting someone else's heart. Actually, yesterday I had one of the most rewarding things. I was sending one of my patients home. He had gotten a transplant last year during COVID, kind of at the start, around April, May timeframe, and he had come in for a little complication that we were taking care of, and he had just received a letter from his donor's family. And he said it was just the most heartwarming thing. He has somebody else's heart in his chest, and he now is going to have a connection with them that nobody else can really ever have. And the plan is to meet up with them, and so they can hear their daughter, hear
Yeah,
their daughter's heart in his chest. So it's pretty cool.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And I mean, that's a unique joy that,
Yes.
that I don't think a lot of people will get the chance to experience. So,
Yes.
um, kind of the last couple of questions, and like I said before the interview, that we can blend these together. But for somebody who's interested in going into the nursing field or eventually becoming a nurse practitioner, what are some things that they can do on the front end? And like I said before, this can apply to like high school students, or I mean, as far back as you can go for as far as youth are concerned. And then are there youth opportunities in your field? So can they observe? Can they job shadow? Can they do those kinds of things? So
Okay.
if you could speak on that, that would be great.
So I'll go back to my high school days because I actually took a class my senior year in high school. It was a Health Occupation Students of America class. Basically, it was a 3.5 hour class. I actually went over to the vocational school across the street from the high school that I went to, and um, I learned a lot of medical stuff. I actually got to go to the hospital, observe, and the joy with this class is at the end we took the state certification for. I basically had a nursing assistant license, basically from my high school, which is huge. Because now, for example, to go to UK's nursing program, you actually have to have your nursing assistant license before you actually get into um, the actual nursing program. So yes, there is opportunities in high school to get involved in healthcare. Now, from a volunteering standpoint, any hospital will let you volunteer, which volunteering in a hospital setting really does help prepare you for what the hospital's like. Um, and I would highly recommend people to get involved with a hospital. Now, as far as observing, once you get to the college level, it's a little bit easier to observe than it is from the high school level.
Right.
Um, that makes it a little bit harder because you can't really observe seeing things before you go to college to decide if that's really what you want to do with your life. But if you have the opportunity to do a class like that, I would highly recommend, because of the girls that I went to that class with, almost all of us are nurses. So
Right.
it's pretty cool that all those people kind of stuck it out. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, I sure do. And are there like any other youth opportunities in the field? I mean, and obviously you can't have fourth graders running amok around the hospital, um, but are there things that kids could do? I mean, can they study on the front end? I mean, anatomy or physiology or some of those basic things that if they get the chance to
I'd say math and science become big, and obviously in the healthcare field. So getting really in depth into those subjects kind of does help you. Um, and if you find something you're passionate about, for example, I've really over this last little bit, I've really gotten more compassionate about the heart, obviously. So the American Heart Association is something that even my son, who's a sixth grader, can get involved with the American Heart Walk. Things are very different right now because we're living in a COVID world where a lot of things you can't get as much group together. But as things get a little bit better, hopefully in the next little bit, yes, we can please hope. Um, uh, we can really get together more and kind of do things like that to where kids can get involved younger, so that they can kind of see what their future might hold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage anybody who's listening that as early as you can, getting some of the most basic certifications. So, first aid certification or CPR certified,
Correct.
and getting those things. That way, I mean, you not only can you be a person that would be extremely helpful in an emergent situation, but that you start to understand some of the processes, because I know in those classes they talk about some of the most basic processes, your cardiovascular system and those kinds of things. So if you can get those certifications, and there's all kinds. The American Heart has certifications. Obviously, the Red Cross has certification programs that you can get into. So as a kid, if you're thinking, I have to wait, or I know that I want to be a nurse, but what can I do up front? I would encourage you to go ahead and start taking those certifications, because it's just number one, it looks really good on an application that you
Yes, it does.
have been that upfront with what exactly it is that you want to do. And then the second thing is that it cannot you cannot be it's hard to say, but you cannot be too prepared. I mean, so having those certifications and being that kind of contributor to your community will really help out. So, but Tonya, I want to thank you for sitting down with me for a few minutes and spending some time. Sarah and I, of course, miss you, and so
We're
so
going to get together when this is over.
I know. One of these days we'll get together. But I'll go ahead and sign us off here. So for Tonya Hatfield, who is a nurse practitioner, I am Eric Conley, Garrett County 4-H Youth Development Agent, and this has been 4-H Career Conversations. Thank you very much.